Hi, everybody. Good evening and welcome. It is the Yard Sign, the most important relevant podcast in politics. Jonny Torres, your host, as always. Thank you so much for tuning in. Feeling still refreshed. Glad to be back. Getting back into the world news, quite literally, as we're going to talk about some global elections happening today. Also, got, of course, our own set of circus acts to talk about happening here in our own lovely country as we get into tonight's topics. End of Title 42, which, of course, big immigration issue, crisis at the border. We'll get into how that may or may not affect us here in Florida. Of course, it's going to affect us. Florida, E-Verified, also an immigration issue hitting home right here after the Tallahassee legislature, our Florida legislature, enacted E-Verify for all businesses. We'll talk about how that's already affecting things that are happening across the state of Florida. And CNN gets trumped. We'll talk about the nice little kind of hole they dug for themselves. And yeah, exactly. And how, if ever, they'll be able to get themselves out of it. And then, as I mentioned, we'll talk about some of the global elections happening to appease the gentleman next to me, Mr. Anibal David Cabrera. Anibal David Cabrera.
I apologize if I enjoy listening to figuring out what the rest of the world is doing.
Nobody cares.
Honestly, no one cares. But I care, damn it. I enjoy it. I exceed other people's, dumpster fires.
The only part that's interesting to me is, of course, the whole dust up now with Twitter and how Elon has found himself kind of involved in Turkey's elections and how that's slightly hypocritical of some of the things he was saying about how he was going to run Twitter. So that,
I mean, he did an interview years ago talking about how he wanted to make sure that Twitter was abiding by the laws of other countries also. And I thought to myself, well, that's not going to age well whatsoever,
right?
Because other countries are run by legit dictators and juntas and things like military officials. And so to say that they're going to run by their laws is basically allowing for censorship of other countries. So
especially during an election.
Twitter was never going to be helpful. If anything, just run Twitter like an American company and get over with.
Yeah, exactly. And so we'll get into some of the nuances of that again as we get deeper into the show. But
it's just you and me tonight.
I know. Second show in a row. Hey, we didn't have anybody last week, remember?
Who did we talk? We had two people here last week.
No, that was the first week.
That was the first week.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we had the short week.
Yes.
And then, but we'll get back into having guests.
It'll be fine.
We've scared some of them off, and so we gotta.
I'm not getting responses.
Right. Yeah, we gotta stroke the ego a little bit and get them back in the doors.
Look, you did great. We used the clip. It looks like an idiot. It's fine.
Not at all.
Did we make you cry? A little, but that's fine. It's fine. Iron sharpens iron.
That's right. Maybe we'll have to start having our lunches before the show. Remember we used to try to have dinner before the show.
We used to do, and now that didn't work.
No.
Because then we're walking up here and we're like,
right. It's nap time after that. So thank you, everybody, for watching. Let's get into tonight's first topic. Of course, the crisis at the border as Title 42 comes to an end. Another one of Joe Biden's great accomplishments, which really, was funny because he won his election criticizing Trump's immigration plan. And then for most of the first year, he stuck with Trump's immigration plan. Right. And then came up with Title 42, which just basically opened the floodgates, because it just allowed people to just come in, ask for asylum for those that came in through the semi-proper channels, and then they were released into the wild of the Americas, right? Now, they're for the people that were going through the process right up until the end of Title 42, their court dates are 4 years from now.
Even in some, it's even worse. The current court dates, I saw this number. I was like, this is ridiculous. April of 2031.
Oh wow! I hadn't seen that
the
one.
New dates. That it's pushed that far back.
Well, I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands of people came in over the past 2 weeks.
So we were talking about this earlier. The beauty of the current, so if you go online and you look about what's happening in the border now, every article, first thing they say, there's been a small tick down in immigrants coming into the country through the southern border. And then you can read the article and you're like, well, yeah, if almost 100,000 people tried to come in before Title 42 got released or got removed, that was the wave, and now people are like, I don't know what is going to happen now. And so you hear the local. Now it's almost to the point where you have to listen to the local people on the ground. So you're looking at like El Paso news, Dallas news, around the border, so then you can really get an understanding what's happening there, because the larger corporations are going to just give you, oh, there was a small tick down in immigration reform, immigration policy.
And those are just the people coming in through the actual openings along the border, like the legal openings along the border. That's not talking about the thousands of people who are coming in through the Rio Grande, who are coming in through other, kind of open parts of the border, endangering themselves, endangering others.
Trying to cross
cartels are still big. The coyotes, right?
Yeah. Jinx. And so I think what we're finding now is that there's going to be a huge legal battle, because the governor of Texas has said multiple times that they're sending the National Guard to fill in the gaps that are being missed. There was a great article from Browns County in Texas where they're having to put barbed wire on the other side of the river to stop it. And there's a whole showdown of, like, you can see there's like 50, 60 immigrants trying to cross the river, and then you see the National Guard with the barbed wire, and they're having to move down. And then the troops are moving too. It's like they're just waiting for them to cross, and they're stopping them. And then the first article is like, oh, you see the border police are not letting them cross the border. That's their job, is for them not to cross the border.
Well, and we'll get into what happened at the CNN Trump debate. But one of the things, or the town hall, it sounded like a debate, was not a debate.
I think you were right the first time.
Yeah. Where he talked about the fact that he wasn't able to finish building the wall. Now, not to say the wall's perfect. Mm-hmm. I mean, again, necessity is the mother of invention, and they've certainly found ways to get over Trump's wall.
Yeah.
But in fact, one of the worst ways was they literally, because there was like steel bars, these steel beams.
And it just stops.
Well, no, there was enough on one side where they figured out that if you just cut out a piece of one on the southern side, mm-hmm. that there was enough of an opening, kind of a sideways gap for people to get through.
Oh my gosh.
And so they're literally lining up like they're walking into a concert or something, like they're walking into a venue through an x-ray machine. They're just going in like kind of sideways, and they're in. And
I don't know how a country like ours allows for such ineptitude when it comes to the southern border. Like, you would think the government would want to do more to put more barriers or more red tape around it. Yeah. And it's like, well, because it's a Republican, they want to not have to they don't want to do anything with the border. And then Trump had 2 years to figure all this out. And again, the minutia of trying to get the government to do something, it takes forever.
Well, even up to Obama's first term, like Democrats were still like, yeah, we gotta, get a control on immigration, and we need to control our border and this and that, and then just went out the window.
They're talking about
now they don't care.
They're talking about 10,000 people on average.
Now they're literally open borders.
8 to 10,000 people crossing the border at any given time, and that's every month, every week. That's insane for an entire year, allowing that to happen.
Well, and they've estimated that there's the official number that they estimate of people that are here legally is somewhere usually around 10 million. Mm-hmm. I estimate it's probably now north of 15.
We're at that point again where both sides have done a shitty job when it comes to immigration reform.
We're so banned.
I know. It's never. You have two Hispanics talking crap about the Republicans and the Democrats.
That in your potty mouth.
That's not. I mean, we're still at the PG-13 rating.
Go ahead.
Don't get mad at me.
That's your one shot. Go.
Okay. So I think what needs to happen is someone needs to have the conversation of what we're going to do with immigration reform. And it needs to be that simple fact of Republicans don't like the idea of individuals massing into the country, because then some people are really concerned about if Texas is going to be a red state. And they say this every single year. Texas is going to turn into a blue state, which I don't think it's going to happen, just because the amount of people that are moving to Texas are probably already Republicans or conservatives to begin with. And two, immigrants usually become conservatives after 2 or 3 generations.
The problem here is that you've got people who have been here 10, 15, 20 years and still are not eligible to vote because they are not citizens.
Correct.
Some of them are not even residents. So that's not even so much the case until you see the end game right now for Democrats, which is to allow illegal immigrants to vote. And that is a very
mind-boggling. And
it's one of those things that they deny it. They say it's not happening. It doesn't exist.
Of course it's happening.
It's absolutely happening. In California, it's happening. In New York, it's happening.
In Chicago, it's happening.
Yeah.
And you hear these stories of letting individuals that are not citizens vote. Oh, because they live here, they should have a representation. They're not supposed to be here.
Right.
And if they are here, then they need to assimilate into the society.
Yep.
And they need to pay for, again, I don't understand how you don't realize, yes, if they're here for asylum seeking everything, that's perfectly fine. Let's run through the paperwork. Let's fund the government to get that number of people. I think Ted Cruz was talking about, or one of the other senators was talking about, sending judges to the border so then they could have those arraignments right then and there.
Right.
So they can have those conversations there. No, now, and of course the Democrats will try to figure out an app. They're thinking that app would fix everything. Yeah. If anything, do you remember the name of the apps? Like CDP1? No. And I'm like, first of all, it's a stupid app. And second of all, it's causing such problems. Because then the other argument on the left is like, well, you're going to have people that can't afford a phone that you're asking them to put, it's like anti-technology, something like that. And I think to myself, that's the problem that we're running into. Like, children are dying in the river because you're building false hope, thinking that they're going to be able to cross in quickly.
Well, and then you have these organizations out there that think that they're helping, right? Because some of them have literally put porta-johns along the border. Now, part of that is because the people entering illegally will go into farmlands and pretty much go to the bathroom wherever they can. And once that happens, they have to completely destroy those crops. Those crops are not able to be processed for consumption. And so that's also affecting a lot of the farmers along the border. The other thing they're doing is they're putting water. They put out water, at various stations where they know people are crossing through illegally, because those areas are very desolate. And in some cases, there's a video that's going viral right now on Facebook and other platforms from a sheriff in Yuma, Arizona, where he talks about the entry point where some of these people are getting in. It's a 2-day walk from the border to civilization, and how a lot of them don't make it.
No.
Because, it's the desert. And it is harsh, especially now going into the summer.
It is an inhumane situation that both governments have made into a bigger issue.
Yeah.
And it's almost to the point to where they want us to continue just to argue the point and not figure out a solution. And I think that's something that we're really having a problem with, is that no one wants to find a solution to this. Tell them, you cross the border, that's fine, you're never allowed to vote. I think we just need to have that kind of let's one step at a time to figure this out.
Yeah.
Because if Republicans don't want them to vote, but they would still let them become residents, that's the way.
Right. Give them work visas, making them ineligible to vote.
Correct.
Obviously, there's steps that would follow after that. But I think that, especially we're going to get into Florida and E-Verify and all that, because the truth of the matter is there's 100 million actual Americans who are not working right now, who are choosing not to work. Okay. Now, out of that, because I looked it up this past week, out of that 100 million, look up inactive workforce. Out of that 100 million Americans, because we're saying, okay, that's fine, E-Verify everybody and have actual Americans take these jobs. Well, the truth of the matter is, aside from maybe construction, there are jobs that Americans are not going to take. There are jobs that, honestly, unless they raise the wages, which is what they should do, Americans are not going to subject themselves to certain types of jobs. It's just part of the elitism of being, the 1% of the earth.
So, this is a very interesting conversation that this is twisted into. I know, I understand where the number is coming from when it comes to 100 million people. However, the employment market is at one of its best times right now, even though our participation number has been lowering. Yeah, but of that,
the workforce participation rate.
But normally it's about 19% of the population do not work. These are retirees. These are people that are in that bracket, and also children under the age of, I think, 17 or 16 that are not allowed to work as well. So
or don't want to work.
Really, like 5% of those individuals are of working age and can work and choose not to work. It's about 5% of the population. I don't think it's not 100, but I think
it's higher than it's been in a long time.
But that's because people are just choosing not to work or not register their employment status. When we moved into the COVID era of work environments, we now have individuals that kind of removed themselves from the normal working situation and kind of into the gig situation, where technically, and this is kind of we do a lot of taxes, we do a lot of accounting, so we have individuals that if it wasn't for them wanting to report their income, they wouldn't have to report their income because there's no mechanism for them to show a report of their income because they're not technically 1099s. They're doing services for individuals, and the services are not hitting the threshold for those individuals. So they are technically under again, if they didn't want to report, they wouldn't have to. Yeah. So I think a lot of people are turned into that situation where they want the freedom to be able to do what they want. Yes, the federal government is not requiring them to report their income. A lot of 1099s are coming out. PayPal is coming out. Venmo is coming out that they're going to have to start showing payments. And even to the point to where, what's the one that is all the banks now? Truist does it. Bank of America does it. It's like that peer-to-peer. Zelle. They're going to have to start also reporting. Sure. So, yes, in the future, we'll have to see what it is. But we have a lot of jobs in this country that a lot of normal Americans, do not want to do. And a lot of that is the service industry and farming and things like that. And I think that immigration status needs to be figured out when it comes to day laborers and everything else. But I think that's still not resolving the problem. The problem is you have maybe 15 million people in this country that are not reporting taxes. Yeah, that's a problem. That needs to be fixed.
Yeah, and look, to the kind of liberal talking points, I will say that, again, there are certain jobs that Americans aren't willing to do. And to that extent, I would say then we need to reform immigration to allow either for more work visas, which is an actual problem. Even here in Florida, here in Tampa Bay, I mean, I have sat down with business owners who say that if not for work visas, we would not have enough people to fill certain jobs. And even then, the jobs we need to fill, we can't fill because there aren't enough work visas.
Well, but there's not enough workers to begin with right now. We're having such a difficulties, and we keep
But that's why they need the work visas.
Yeah, but
it's because there are people that are willing to come and do these jobs if given the opportunity legally.
But liberals are not. That's not the talking points that they want. When it comes to us talking about e-verification and requiring people to show legitimacy of why they're living here, is because I want to make sure they're not getting paid $2 an hour in some trailer park on a farm, and they're getting abused because of it.
Yeah,
that's what's happening. What's happening is these individuals are coming to the country cannot get legitimate working because they're not legitimately allowed to be here.
And that's the thing. And so the quandary becomes, okay, do you like having, your $5 a pound for strawberries, or do you want to pay $20 a pound? You know what I mean? And obviously, those numbers, I'm just making those up. But there is going, under this E-Verify that we'll get into in a second, I mean, there is going to be a financial impact to that. What it is and how bad it is, we don't know yet.
I feel to ensure that there really isn't slave labor, which is what it is.
Exactly. It's like, so you want to keep your food prices low, but then, so that means you're okay with slave wages and slave labor?
I mean, these were conversations that they had when it came to making fabrics in the 1800s. Like, are you okay with the cotton being as cheap as it is? Right. Or and you're okay with slave labor? Like, that's what's happening.
Yeah, and everybody adjusted.
Yeah, and I think that's what needs to happen now. And even when it comes to when it comes to day laborers in the farms to individuals cleaning in multinational headquarters, there needs to be legitimate individuals willing to say, look, I am not okay with people getting paid below minimum wage, to the point just because they're falling through the cracks because we don't have a system to catch the business owners that are taking advantage of the illegal immigrants,
especially when it comes to minorities, Hispanic, Black, Asian, within those that vote for the Democrat Party. It's like, do you not realize that the jobs that these people are taking are some of the very jobs that you occupy? Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because again, illegal immigration only hurts those at the bottom.
Correct.
Because these aren't like in most cases, they aren't high skilled laborers. Okay, these are low skill, low wage earners who are going to be replaced by low skilled, low wage earners.
Yeah.
Only it's going to be off the books.
And again, I think this is a larger conversation, is that people that are fleeing Venezuela, people that are fleeing parts of South America because of how devastating it has become, they need to get asylum. They need to be able to they need to be able to go through the process so that we can get them connected to where they need to go so they can work the jobs that they were raised to do and trained to do. It was like family and friends that came from Cuba. These were doctors, engineers, like lawyers. And because of the Castro system, they were pushed out of the system because they were highly educated. And then because they couldn't get their papers in the United States, they were driving taxis when the guy has a PhD. Like that's the stupidity of having a system that is not reformed yet. And again, this is not the first time this country has dealt with this. This is, I think, the third time a huge waves have been coming through, and the government does some form of asylum of some sort or amnesty, and then people say, well, this should fix it. It's not going to fix it. It's just going to cause a problem 10 years from now.
Correct. And the difference here is that, smartly so, Florida, Texas, I'm not sure of any other states that are doing it, but I know Florida and Texas are doing it, taking a lot of these migrants and sending them to sanctuary cities.
Yes.
Because what has come out today is Mayor Eric Adams of New York City is now appealing to the New York legislature to allow him to repeal or modify their sanctuary city law because they can't take any more illegal immigrants. In fact, it's getting so bad that they're kicking out homeless veterans. I
saw that article.
Out of hotels around the state and replacing them with legal immigrants.
First of all, they're getting a few busloads.
Yeah.
Texas is getting entire rivers full of them trying to get through, and you're getting upset because of 3 buses.
It's like, imagine if they were a real border state. No, not a community border state, but a real border state.
Remember when they dropped off immigrants at Martha's Vineyard?
Oh, yeah.
And you would have thought they were like 100,000 migrants that passed by, when really it was like maybe 1,000. And like the stupidity of this whole conversation. Like, you guys are willing to ramp up and get upset but we're dealing with that every day in the border states. Yeah. You're dealing with this once or twice a year, and you're getting mad because of that? No, share in the wealth. If you're going to make these laws and become sanctuary cities, then take it. Then take the bus loads.
And like you said, when you put a Band-Aid on one end, it's just going to come out another end.
Correct.
Because here in Florida, we ended the wet foot, dry foot law, which was a federal law, but it was the Miami delegation of congressmen that put the bill together and ended that policy. Well, what happened? Obviously, we still have Cuban immigrants fleeing and trying to make it to the United States. But, you got your Haitians, Jamaicans, people that are coming from the Caribbean, for the rest of the Caribbean, that are now going to, because they can hop on a cruise ship to get off of Mexico and then come in through the Mexican border, and they're doing it because they realize, well, it's still easier than trying to get legalized through Florida.
But Johnny, remember, we sent the vice president to El Salvador. Into Central America.
It solved everything, didn't it?
I thought it did. I mean, her grace and her willingness to tell people to stay home.
That's right.
Really did some great work there. Isn't that?
Well, and looking at the Statue of Liberty, I remember it says right there at the bottom, and there's a little asterisk, and it says "Stay home."
Yeah, I think that's what it says. That's exactly what it says. Your laws have consequences, and this is what's happening right now. And
the policy.
And to say that the White House is going to sue Texas over them putting National Guard members on the border because of the crisis that's happening in Texas is mind-boggling. You're going to waste that kind of money on that.
You can't solve the problem by exacerbating the problem.
No. Putting troops on the border is not solving the problem. Changing policy will stop the problem.
Right. And then the problem is that Texas, like Florida, has a right to defend itself.
Correct.
And it has a right to enact legislation that is going to protect itself.
And it's not that you and me are heartless when it comes to what's happening. I mean, our families are very much aware of what's happening in South America and very much aware of what is causing people to move and everything else. But the amount of people that are taking advantage of these asylum seekers, the coyotes, the drug dealers, the cartels, that are taking this money and then just dropping these people off in the middle of nowhere, sometimes not even over the U.S. border,
right,
just somewhere else in Mexico.
Yeah, they don't know any better.
And that's because you allowed this unknownness of what's happening. Well, maybe we might be able to get in the border. Well, does it make more sense for me to stay in a war-torn, economically collapsed country, or can I try to get my family over? Yeah. And I feel that, I understand that, but we have to figure out a way to make it streamlined so then we're not having to have such an issue. And if we cannot do that, then we have to start telling people, you just cannot get up and move. Change the country that you're in now and try to fix it, or figure out a way to start a revolution.
Well, and they were criticizing Trump because the original policy was to send back children who were unattended, who came by themselves, unsupervised, or whatever the term is. Mm-hmm. And they said, no, that's terrible. How dare you go send them back to these countries, where there's gangs and there's violence and poverty and all this stuff. And they're like, okay, so then we'll keep them here and process them until somebody comes to pick them up. Oh, how dare you put these kids in holding facilities, and how dare you put them in cages, and how dare you, and what did the Democrats do? They kept them in the same facilities that the Trump administration did.
Oh, but you don't hear about that anymore.
No, of course not.
And again, when did we stop separating children from their families, from their parents, when their parents broke the laws here in the United States?
Well, some of them don't even come with their parents.
There is a process. If you get arrested and you have children under a certain age, then there's a process that they go,
right,
whatever. We can't even get our adoption situation resolved. Like there's so many problems here that we should be focusing on, but instead we focus on making sure that there's enough non-binary bathrooms at Disney. Like this is the things that we're wasting time on,
right?
And figuring out which new gender we're going to be specific on, and upset that Jordan Peter wants to make sure something's going on. These are things that we're wasting time on when we should be focusing on immigration reform. We should be figuring out why it takes 3 years to adopt a child in the United States. Yeah. Why is it so much easier for me just to go to Thailand, which we'll be talking about later, and just pick up a kid when it takes me forever to be able to adopt a child here?
Right.
And it's so frustrating that these are the little things that are happening. We have a debt ceiling crisis that's happening that we're not even going to talk about. And the ramifications. We're going to get it done. It's going to happen. But we have a 2 months of ramp up to talk about it because it's something to talk about.
All right, so let's transition right into Florida, get E-Verified, and thank you everybody for watching The Yard Sign. Don't forget, you can find us on all the podcast platforms out there, wherever you like to listen to the audio version of our podcast. You can find us there. You can even ask Alexa to play The Yard Sign, and she'll do that for you. So look us up. We've got a large number of people who listen on their Amazon products. We also have a lot of people listen on their Samsung phones, but of course, iPhones are still the predominant platform for our audience.
If you enjoy slave labor, yeah, it's perfectly fine.
But we appreciate you watching, listening to the show, wherever you may be doing so. We, of course, got coming up, CNN gets trumped, and our global election updates from Mr. Anibal David Cabrera. Right now, Florida getting E-Verified. One of the major cornerstones of Governor DeSantis's legislative session this year was the passing of E-Verify. Now, those of us in the process realize and will fully acknowledge that this is a political play for his administration, for his campaign, that I believe is going to be kicking off until the second week of June.
Correct.
And also, okay, got it. So it's one of these things that while I often say this about liberal legislature, liberal legislative agendas, is that they mean well, but they never think of the unintended consequences. And I think in this case, he may be putting himself in a corner that he can't get out of, because Florida, again, benefits greatly from worker visas. It also benefits greatly from illegal immigrants and those that are willing to work off the books. And that's no secret. There are a lot of Republican voters out there who are business owners who, in some cases, like it or not, they will tell you they have to employ illegal immigrants or their business would go under. They simply would not be able to sustain or grow their business without hiring people that are willing to do some of these jobs.
I think we need it.
Landscaping, housekeeping.
I get it. Then you raise rates. You raise prices.
And look, some of them aren't even making less than minimum wage.
We cannot.
Some of them are making way better than minimum wage.
You have to pay taxes on individuals that are earning. So
not even that. It's just that there's such a high demand.
Business owners have to pay for every employee that they're getting. So there's that charge as well. Right. I think what needs to happen is people need to be honest. Like, what are they okay and what are they not okay with paying? If you're okay with paying X amount of money to get your lawn cut every single month, knowing that it's an illegal immigrant that's doing it, and that they're getting charged extremely less, and they're living in low and unimaginable circumstances. If you're okay with that, then just say it, that you're okay with that. Yeah. You're okay with slave labor. You're okay with that being the thing. If that's what you're okay with, that's fine. At least you're being honest and just say it. But at the end of the day, I do agree that we need to do e-verification so that we can get the stigma out of it, that the government and individuals have to know that you're here.
Right.
And if something goes wrong, because then you're not willing to report crimes that are committed to you, not by you, but to you.
Right.
You're not willing to call the police. You're not willing to use services, civil services. You're not willing to be a part of the system. And if you're not willing to be a part of the system, then I get what are you doing here?
Yeah, because really the consequences go both ways with E-Verify. So obviously the business gets fined after multiple fines, and they get in more serious trouble, and there's a whole trajectory for that. On the individual side, they also you can get fined. Obviously, if they get caught, they can get deported, and it's also the other part of this legislative session was the fact that hospitals have to report if the person that they treated that was unable to pay for their treatment was an illegal immigrant or not, because they are wanting to gauge the financial impact of illegal immigration. We know that they go to the schools. We know that they go to they use other public services, and hospitals being maybe the primary one. And maybe not so much for us, but certainly the ones along the Mexican border where they end up coming in with dehydration.
That's almost like a last minute ditch. Like, you have to get, if you're sick or something, you have to go to the hospital, which means that that we're able to track that. Now, again, this builds into the fear of what happens if you live in these states and you want to go to the hospital. Then there's a likelihood that someone's going to say that you're an immigrant. Now, is the system going to be built to where then ICE knows about this and they're going to figure out a way to deport? And ICE is nothing compared to where they were before. Yeah. So I doubt that's going to be what's happening. But we have to figure out a way to track these individuals. And again, if you're already, it might be that the simplest law of saying, like, look, if you have not committed any crimes besides coming into the country and it's been X amount of years, then let's figure out a way for you to get to a path of residency. And so, but if you came here correctly, then you can get the path of citizenship. Yeah. These things are not difficult to have conversations to figure out what the mutual agreement when it comes to both sides of this conversation. We're not going to, and I know your friend, Congressman from South Florida, made a comment that we should deport all illegal immigrants that currently live in the United States. That is not possible. I'm sorry, that's just not possible.
No, it would take I'd say at least a decade.
It's not possible, and it's inhumane. It's a waste of time and a waste of a lot of money.
Sure.
So again, we could be using our time and money and resources somewhere else. And if they're already here, they're already quasi and like doing what they're supposed to be doing, then let's get them some form of path of residency, and let them start paying taxes, sending money back to, which they're already doing, sending money back to their home countries.
And maybe it's a third tier. Maybe it's a third tier beneath residency. Maybe it's a worker status. Yeah. And I don't know really what the differences would be between that and a residency. But
there are. There are day laborers that do that cross the border.
Look, are we talking about a path to citizenship? Yes. Because what other solution is there? And there needs to, and maybe it doesn't. And again, it doesn't always have to. It may not always lead to citizenship.
Not everyone wants to be a citizen here.
No, and if you screw up, you can go. Then you are deported. Yeah. And make it a one strike policy. You commit a crime, you go home.
We should host a forum to figure out like the 5 points that everyone agrees on. Yeah. That we can move this, because obviously people that are elected are not doing Ish.
Right.
See, you gave me one. I'm using ish. These people are not doing anything for this. So might as well just us create a forum, see the craziness that happens, and just videotape it and see what goes on. But I think you put a room with about 50 to 100 Latinos of some sort and of some other Caribbeans and blah, 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 and other immigrants and minorities. We'll figure out what we would want this to look like. 5 points, send it up to DC. Look, if we can agree, Dominicans, Hispanics, Mexicans, everything else. Yeah. If this kind of like this salad bowl of countries can figure out a way to have at least, look, we understand citizenship is off the table. You're here illegally, citizenship is off the table. You knew that entering into this country, you were doing it wrong. You were doing it wrong. Yeah.
Now, if you entered illegally, I don't think you should be allowed to become a citizen.
Correct. However, you keep your nose down, you keep your head down, you keep it all clean, you move forward, which is very difficult for some other countries.
Liberals will argue that at some point then you deserve, let's say you're here 25 years, right? But you entered illegally, that you at some point deserve the right to vote. And I disagree.
I disagree because you're now taking the space of someone that did it all legally.
Sure.
And they, like, my mom.
Even if you ask for asylum.
It took my mom not 20 years, but yeah, close to that to get her citizenship. She came in correctly. She'd been doing everything she's done her whole life. She always had her TIN number. Everything was fine. And then one day she was like, Trump was president. She wanted to vote for Trump and everything else. She's like, I'm going to go. And she did it. And it was great. Yeah, right. And we cried and we flags and we looked crazy.
But that's, what was the window? What was the window between her being a resident and becoming a citizen? What do you know? Have an idea?
15 years.
See, because to your point, not everybody feels the need to become a citizen.
There was no need. She had her papers. There was no problems, whatever.
Still paying taxes.
Right. And everything else. Everything was fine. Property owner, everything was fine. Right. And then one day she decided, okay, it's time for me to become a citizen. She wanted to vote for Papa Trump, who has a very large Latino following. Yeah. We like a strong leader. That's all we know.
Unfortunately, that's most of Latin America's problem. All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching The Yard Sign. Anibal David Cabrera, your host, Jonny Torres. Thank you so much for listening, watching, whenever, wherever you may be doing so. Speaking of Papa Trump, he was so graciously invited, I'm sure with no money involved, to take part in a town hall on CNN recently. And, man, was it pretty much, I think, par for the course. I think, to use a phrase I think Donald Trump would like, it was a hot mess. And so I think, are you able to play back the video we got over there?
That is the face of full confidence in what's about to happen.
We're going to see. I think we got clips from the CNN town hall here. It's kind of a best of that was put together thanks to the Blaze. The Blaze Network.
And let's see.
Yeah. You may have to unmute it. Yeah. It's the volume, I think, is on the right. On the video itself. The video is muted. Yeah. There we go. All right.
No questions are off the table, and we agreed to no conditions. We're here to give voters the answers that they deserve. Please welcome the frontrunner for the Republican nomination, former President Donald Trump.
Can you put us picture-in-picture on the?
If you look at what's gone to our country has gone to hell. Our borders are bad. Our military has been bad. You look at the taxes. You look at inflation. What's happened to inflation? It's just destroying our country. We've really become, in many ways, a third world country. And it's very sad what's happened in this administration. And it's something that will turn around on day one. We were energy independent. Now energy is at a level that we've never had to pay before. Nobody can afford to continue to pay what's happening with energy. But we were energy independent. We were getting out of Afghanistan with strength and with dignity. And instead we got out, we looked like fools, probably the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. One of the big problems was that Nancy Pelosi, Crazy Nancy as I affectionately call her, Crazy Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington were in charge, as you know, of security. And they did not do their job.
They're not in charge of the National Guard. You're in charge of the National Guard.
Well, I offered them National Guard. I said, we'll give you soldiers, we'll give you National Guard, we'll give you whatever you want. And they turned me down.
You're
and in fact, she turned me down. She turned me down in writing.
But you said you weren't very involved that day. You did tell your supporters to come to Washington. You tweeted about it, about that speech that happened on the rally.
Am I allowed to say that?
When they went to the Capitol and they were breaking into the Capitol, smashing windows, injuring police officers, why did it take you 3 hours to tell them to go home?
I don't believe it did. Oh, let me pull it out. I have to pull it
out. People were allowed
on that little. I have to pull it out.
Children.
So if you look at...
That's what she said.
On January 5th, the day before, I said, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. Stay peaceful. This was the day before, and this was in the form of Twitter. Now I use Truth Social. I think it's far superior, okay? I hope everybody's on Truth. If you look January 6th, this is before 2:30. I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. This is right after, as it was happening. But what happened is they took it down. I don't know why. I think they took it down because it was so good. They didn't like it being up there. I am asking, and we didn't know until I got it back, because now I have 90 million people waiting for me to go back, but I'm on Truth, and I'm staying on Truth. Listen, I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violation. We want no violation. We want no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you.
The fact that you read that out loud, that's insane.
That was very early.
Mr. President, I looked at the same timeline that you did.
No, but you didn't report that. You know why? Because it was taken down.
We did report it. I was reporting that
day. It was taken down and it wasn't.
But when it was clear to you that they were not being peaceful, you saw them rushing the Capitol, breaking windows. They were hitting officers with flagpoles, tasing them, beating them up. When it was clear they weren't being peaceful, why did you wait 3 hours to tell them to leave the Capitol? They listened to you like no one else.
They didn't listen to
They do.
The first
I agree with that. But
so why
Nancy
didn't you tell them to go home sooner?
Nancy Pelosi and the mayor are in charge. I assume they were able to do their job. They weren't.
But Pelosi's not in charge of Capitol
And if you remember, I made a
Actually,
video.
she has charge of
right
Capitol
outside
Police.
the Oval Office in the Rose
That's security
Garden.
with the police.
And I'm very proud of that video. I didn't have a script. I don't need scripts like a certain person that's in there right now.
The video, it came out much later after they had already attacked the Capitol. Going back to your influence, in that 3 hours, over 140 officers were injured that day.
And a person named Ashley Babbitt was killed.
Yes.
He got a lot of flack for this.
Killed, and she shouldn't have been killed. And that thug that killed her, there was no reason to shoot her. At blank range, cold blank range, they shot her. And she was a good person. She was a patriot.
There was no reason.
There was no reason.
She was inside the Capitol building.
And
we can go ahead and pause it because we got to start wrapping it up.
The fact that he killed her.
The officer was not bragging.
So, classic Trump. I mean, he insulted the moderator. He insulted CNN. You know, it was just textbook Trump.
This is not even about Trump, honestly. This is about CNN and CNN trying to figure out what to do now that so much stuff has happened to CNN.
Right.
We no longer have Don Lemon there. They no longer have Chris Cuomo.
Well, and it's open season on who's going to be the dominating news network for this election.
Correct. It's not going to be CNN. It's not going to be MSNBC. It might not even be Fox.
Yeah.
Like, the things have fallen apart and collapsed so quickly.
Media is collapsing.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's completely good about it.
I
think what's happening now is that a lot more online media is starting to focus. A lot more small independent agencies are starting to go up to it. Yeah. And I think that's what people need to have. We need to get out of these conglomerates and back into local media, local stories, local politics, and that's what needs to happen. What Trump said there, and a lot of some stuff I didn't agree with what he said. Some stuff I can agree with. CNN told the audience not to boo at any time. Like, that was told to the audience not to boo.
Right.
So then, of course, people automatically assume that, okay, so CNN is in it for Trump. CNN's in it for the ratings. That's what CNN's for. And then you see Jon Stewart, oh, I got nothing from this. This wasn't meant for you to get anything from it to begin with.
Right.
You're just mad at CNN for letting him go on. And then you're saying, well, we shouldn't platform. You're not going to platform the man that's probably going to be the Republican nominee.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the stupidest thing you could possibly say, which will piss off the rest of the country.
Well, and again, it was a preview of the Donald Trump that we can expect in this election. If anybody thought he was going to be any different, he's not.
But you know what? If he can start pulling it out more, I'm more than willing to see what's going to happen. If he keeps, that was phenomenal.
Well, again, despite what you may think of, of him and him being a threat to democracy and all that nonsense,
he's not a threat. He's exactly what democracy needs right now.
Well, and And that's, again, like, compare him to some of the figures that we've had in politics throughout our entire American history. Like, he's just as colorful as some of them, especially at the founding of our country.
We quasi had a dictatorship during World War II.
Right.
Like, this is not the craziest thing we've ever had before.
Right.
We've had presidents shoot other people while in office. Like, this is not that far off.
Well, and if you don't think that it's happened on the other side, Lyndon Baines Johnson was incredibly known for being a bully and a tyrant and getting his way.
Eleanor Roosevelt was the first female president.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't make that case. I mean, it's but real quick, because we got to wrap it up, unfortunately. Go ahead and give us a breakdown on the Taiwanese and Turkish elections.
Taiwanese?
Yeah, that's how you say it. Taiwanese.
Taiwan is a country.
Taiwanese elections.
Thailand elections. Taiwan.
Oh, I thought you said Taiwan elections.
No, Thailand.
Oh, Thailand. Oh, sorry. Thailand's elections.
Since 2014, the military.
We were talking about two different countries.
No,
Okay.
I'm talking about Thailand.
I know. I thought you meant. I thought you said Taiwan. But go ahead.
Anyways, I know we're wrapping up quickly. I'm sorry, I apologize. There were a few elections that happened over the weekend. One of the biggest ones people were talking about is what happened in Turkey with Erdogan almost taking another election for himself. This time he got less than 50%, and people are freaking out because this is the first time it's ever been this close for his election cycle. He would be now elected 4 times in a row, and we'll see what happens there. Redo elections, runoff elections, are 2 weeks from now, so it should be quite interesting to see what happens there. High turnout in Turkey. A lot of people were upset with how he handled the earthquakes. A lot of people were upset at what he's doing when it comes to international and when it comes to foreign policy. I think their inflation rate is over 100% right now because he doesn't believe in increasing interest rates, which is hilarious. So that's going to be fun to watch. I talked about a little bit last time, talking about this is a very pivotal election cycle for Turkey and to see how to go forward. They are a member of the European Union. They are a member of NATO. They're a big supporter, and they have been playing both sides when it comes to the Ukraine-Russia order. In Thailand, a whole nother conversation. They also had elections, and their Move Forward Progress Party swept every single part of the Thailand elections, and that is something that is seen as a very good thing at the moment. The Thai opposition party swept the board Sunday nationwide elections. The voters delivered a powerful reboot to the military-backed establishment that has been ruling the country since 2014 with a junta. There was a 75.2% showing of Thailand elections, which is huge. Of those were able to. That's the biggest thing. The new guy that's running that won his election, they don't know if he's going to be prime minister yet because there's a complication there. He is a Harvard alumni and a background in business, so we'll see what goes there. He's definitely super
Kim Jong-un also. I don't know if it was Harvard, but he came to school here.
No, not in the U.S. He was educated in
or was it in
Europe? I think it was in Oxford. I think he was educated in Oxford.
I'm was in North Korea.
Wrong. I'm probably wrong. There's no education in North Korea.
Exactly.
So what's probably going to happen is that the military isn't out of it, even though they got knocked out completely at the moment. With elections for the next prime minister to form a government, the party coalition must be the majority of the combined 750 state seats of the lower and upper chambers. But under the junta-era constitution, Thailand's 250 seats Senate is chosen entirely by the military, which means they will always have a pro-military candidate up for prime minister. And that's the worldly wrap-up right now.
Wow. Well, thank you, sir. We didn't get to the Elon Musk thing, but I'm sure that's not going to die off, and we did touch on it enough. But basically Elon Musk said, it's like, would you like a throttled, Twitter in Turkey where people still have access to some version of Twitter, even with certain accounts, off the platform, or would you prefer there not be any Twitter at all?
I prefer not be any Twitter whatsoever because you're just lying to yourself. I get it. I get what he's saying and I understand what he's saying, but you either have a little bit of truth or no truth. Then just do no truth because that's what's going to happen. You're going to have the junta saying who can and cannot have Twitter accounts.
But Twitter is far more useful than just politics. I mean,
no, not when it comes around the world.
No, I mean, in other countries, but just like we do here, we use it for a lot of other things. We use it to keep track of sporting events and other news and marketing. And, there's lots of other uses for Twitter.
The rest of the world
politics.
doesn't care what's happening.
But they don't only use it for politics in these countries.
You'd be surprised. A lot of people.
The majority, like here, the majority of it is for news and politics. But there's so many other uses for it that I would say to lose a platform like that, I think would be hugely detrimental.
When you have a country that's run by a dictatorship that says yes or no, what happens? Then it doesn't make any sense to have Twitter whatsoever. It's like Twitter going to China and trying to figure out how to work with China. Just don't call it Twitter. Call it something else.
Yeah, but let's say here, like if you were to prevent certain organizations from being on the platform, do you just shut the whole thing down then?
Well, if you're saying that the United States is going to start restricting,
because that's what they were doing,
public company from allowing certain people to say certain things, which they were. Yeah. Then you really should just shut it down. Just say you're propaganda for the government and just move on from there. And then we can all live our lives thinking that, oh no, Twitter's perfectly fine, or these companies perfectly. No one's telling us what it can and cannot say. No, it's fine. We'll just live in a bubble. Again, the 90% of the country does not care what happens outside the four walls of their homes half the time. So God forbid something happens.
Well, we'll disagree on that one. But on behalf of Anibal, David Cabrera, and yours truly, Jonny Torres, thank you so much, everybody, for watching, listening, wherever you may be doing so. Again, you can find the video version of our show on Facebook, YouTube, and the audio version you can find it on your favorite podcast platforms, wherever the tech overlords allow. So please look us up, like, subscribe, follow, share, and comment on behalf of Anibal, David Cabrera, and our producer.
Hey.
We got to come up with like a nickname for our producer.
We need to get her a mic.
Well, she has the mic. She just it wasn't anything for her to chime in today.
Finally.
Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.